According to police, Noah's mother put him to sleep around 1 a.m. When she went back to check on him, he was gone. She reported him missing to police around 11:30 a.m. This normally quiet Hampton neighborhood overtaken by crime scene tape, search parties, and forensic units, all centered around this mobile home, the last place 2-year-old Noah Tomlin was seen.
The neighborhood is already awake when the first patrol vehicles arrive. It is late morning in a quiet mobile home community in Hampton, Virginia. The roads are narrow, bordered by closely spaced homes and small front yards. Some residents step outside and stand at a distance, watching as uniformed officers move deliberately between trailers. There is no rush, no shouting, just methodical motion. Doors open and close, radios murmur quietly. Search activity begins without spectacle. Officers walk the perimeter of the property. Others speak calmly with nearby residents. A few unmarked vehicles arrive and park along the street. The setting does not resemble a dramatic emergency scene. It looks controlled, procedural, purposeful. What is clear is that something is wrong. A young child is missing. No name is spoken yet. No photographs are held up to cameras. There is no immediate explanation offered to the public. What exists instead is uncertainty, the kind that settles slowly over a place and changes how every sound feels. The absence is already being treated as serious. Law enforcement presence increases as the hours pass. The search expands beyond a single home. Officers document the area carefully, moving through shared spaces, checking common paths, and noting distances between homes. This is not the beginning of the story. This is what comes after. This documentary examines the disappearance of a 2-year-old child in Hampton, Virginia, and the investigation that followed. From the outset, the case appeared straightforward. A young child reported missing from his home. A search initiated, community concern rising. But as days turned into weeks, and confirmed information slowly emerged, it became clear that the story was more complex than it first appeared. In this film, we will carefully separate what is known from what is not. We will rely on verified timelines, official records, and confirmed investigative findings. Where information is unavailable or unclear, that uncertainty will be acknowledged rather than filled with assumption. No conclusions will be drawn prematurely. No accusations will be made beyond what has been legally established. The focus here is not speculation, but clarity. To understand how this case unfolded, it is necessary to step back to examine the ordinary routines that existed before the disappearance and to reconstruct the final confirmed moments with care.
Tonight there's a desperate plea, not just from family, but the community as well.
Somebody knows what happened. I don't care what they say, somebody knows what happened. And so I really hope that if they're honest and they have kids, they would bring that baby back if they took it or tell somebody what happened.
There are so many prayers going up. We've got whole communities praying together. And I pray for a safe return. I have a daughter. I would want someone looking for her if she was missing.
I've never searched for a child, but I'll be willing to crawl down here on my hands and knees to find the baby.
We also spoke with a neighbor who knows the mother personally. She says she lives in the mobile home with 3 children, all under the age of 5.
Before law enforcement arrived, before the searches and official statements, life inside the community followed familiar patterns. Bayside Mobile Home Village is a residential area where families live close together. Neighbors are within sight of one another. Sounds carry easily, doors closing, conversations outside.
Considering everything from the child just walking away, but 2 years old shouldn't be able to walk too far, to all the way up to and including foul play. We're looking at all potential possibilities.
The everyday movement of people going about their routines. Within this setting lived a 2-year-old child named Noah Tomlin. At 2 years old, a child's world is small and structured. Daily life revolves around basic routines: waking, eating, napping, sleeping. Interactions are largely confined to caregivers and the immediate environment. Independence is limited. Awareness of danger is minimal. In the days leading up to the disappearance, there were no public alerts, no emergency bulletins, no indication to outside observers that something was about to change. Visitors came and went from the home. According to confirmed accounts, adults known to the household were present on multiple occasions. These interactions were unremarkable at the time and did not immediately raise concern. On June 26th, an adult visitor saw Noah alive inside the residence.
Well, if this were our child, we would certainly want to remain optimistic. That's why our investigators are working diligently because deep down in our hearts, we all have the same hope that Noah will be found alive and safe.
Later that same day, another visitor attempted to see him but was told that the child was asleep and did not have contact. These moments were not recorded as unusual when they occurred. They were ordinary explanations, consistent with a toddler's routine. Life continued. The community remained unaware that these would later become reference points, ordinary moments that would take on significance only in hindsight. What follows is a reconstruction of the last confirmed timeline based solely on verified information. June 22, an adult visitor confirmed seeing Noah alive inside the home. Later the same day, another visitor was present but did not see the child and was told that he was asleep. There is no verified documentation placing Noah outside the residence on this date. June 24, approximately 1 a.m., according to the mother's statement, Noah was put to bed at this time. This is the last claimed sighting provided by a caregiver. June 24, 11:36 a.m., police received a report that Noah was missing. Officers responded to the residence and initiated standard missing child procedures. At this point, there were no confirmed sightings of Noah after the early morning hours. No independent witnesses placed him outside the home. No verified evidence indicated his movement beyond the immediate residential area. July. Weeks later, Noah's remains were located at the Hampton steam plant, a trash diversion facility. The discovery shifted the investigation from a missing child case to a death investigation. An autopsy was conducted. The cause of death was ruled homicide. Investigators also documented evidence indicating long-term abuse prior to death. These findings were released as factual determinations. No additional conclusions are introduced here beyond those official results. The timeline ends where certainty ends. What remains are questions, not yet answered, and an investigation that would continue to evolve. By late morning on June 24, the routine of the day breaks. At 11:36 a.m., Noah's mother contacts police to report that her 2-year-old son is missing. The call is treated as urgent. Given the child's age, officers immediately begin a missing child investigation rather than a delayed inquiry. Patrol units are dispatched to the residence at Bayside Mobile Home Village. Officers arrive and begin standard procedures, securing the immediate area, confirming basic information, and determining when Noah was last seen. At this stage, there is no public announcement. The focus is internal and procedural. Investigators establish a working timeline based on the information available at that moment. They document statements, identify who was present in the home, and begin assessing the surrounding area. Because toddlers are unable to travel far on their own, the initial assumption guiding the response is that Noah could be nearby. The response escalates quickly. Additional officers are requested. Supervisors arrive. The situation is formally classified as a critical missing child case. From the beginning, time is treated as a factor. As the afternoon progresses, the search widens beyond the immediate home. The Hampton Police Division coordinates ground searches throughout the mobile home park and surrounding areas. Officers move methodically, checking yards, storage areas, and common spaces. Nearby streets are walked repeatedly. Drainage areas and wooded patches are examined. Additional resources are requested as the scope increases. The investigation expands to include the Virginia State Police, who provide specialized support. Shortly after, federal assistance is brought in. The Federal Bureau of Investigation becomes involved, including personnel from its behavioral science unit. This level of response reflects the seriousness with which the case is being treated. Search efforts intensify across multiple environments. Land searches are conducted repeatedly, with officers and volunteers covering the same areas multiple times. Water searches involve dive teams examining nearby bodies of water. Air support is deployed, including drones used to scan hard-to-reach areas. Marsh and brush areas near the community are checked carefully due to limited visibility. K-9 units are brought in to assist, working alongside officers in structured search patterns. Side-scan sonar is used in water searches to detect objects beneath the surface. Investigators also begin examining areas beyond the immediate neighborhood. Trash and dumpster locations are checked. Collection routes are reviewed. This leads to an extensive and labor-intensive effort, landfill searches involving more than 1,000 tons, roughly 2 million pounds of trash. These searches take place over days, not hours. Personnel rotate in shifts. Teams document each area covered. Nothing is assumed. Everything is logged. By the time these efforts conclude, more than 10,000 man-hours have been recorded across all participating agencies. As the official search expands, the community responds in parallel. Neighbors in Bayside Mobile Home Village step forward to assist. Some join organized search efforts, coordinated by law enforcement. Others conduct independent searches, walking nearby streets, checking open areas, and sharing information with officers. Community members distribute flyers and talk among themselves, trying to piece together anything they may have seen or heard. Candlelight vigils are held, drawing residents together in quiet support. Family members and foster connections make public appeals for information, asking anyone with knowledge, no matter how small it might seem, to come forward. Throughout this period, law enforcement continues to emphasize verified information over rumor. Tips are documented and assessed. Leads are followed, then either confirmed or ruled out. Despite the scale of the response, Noah is not located during the active search phase. And as days pass, the focus of the investigation begins to shift. As search operations continue, investigators begin reviewing the case more closely. This does not replace the search, it runs alongside it. Records are checked, timelines are reviewed, statements are compared for consistency. Investigators look for confirmation points, independent sightings, physical evidence, or data that can place Noah at a specific time and location.
And including the behavioral science unit out of Quantico that have assisted. The information gained through the investigation helped focus the search efforts. Conservatively, we've spent over 10,000 man-hours on this process. We have been through 1,000 tons, and let me put that in perspective, that's 2 million pounds of garbage, and searched that by hand. The priority all along has been to find Noah. It's with very mixed emotions that we report today that goal has been accomplished.
What becomes increasingly clear is that confirmed information is limited. No verified sightings occur after the early morning hours of June 24. No witnesses place Noah outside the residence later that day. No physical evidence is recovered during the initial neighborhood searches. Investigators note gaps, not conclusions, but absences. They also note the scale of resources being committed. The involvement of state and federal agencies, the landfill searches, and the extensive use of specialized tools signal that the investigation is no longer focused solely on the possibility of a child wandering away. Official language remains careful. Statements emphasize that all possibilities are being considered. No public accusations are made. No conclusions are announced. At this stage, the case exists in a space defined by effort rather than answers. The search has been vast. The community has responded. The resources committed are significant. But the central question remains unresolved, and it is within that uncertainty that the investigation continues to evolve. As the investigation continued, attention widened beyond the immediate search to include relevant background information available through public records. This shift did not assign fault or conclusions. It reflected standard investigative practice, understanding prior system contact that might provide context for decision-making, timelines, and documented history. Public records showed that Noah had prior involvement with foster and respite care providers. These placements had occurred before his disappearance and were documented through existing child welfare channels. Such arrangements are typically used to provide temporary care and support, and their presence alone does not indicate wrongdoing. They do, however, establish that multiple institutions had prior awareness of Noah's circumstances. Following Noah's disappearance, Child Protective Services became formally involved. Other children in the household were removed and placed with family members. This action followed established protocols once a missing child investigation escalates in severity. The role of child welfare agencies in situations like this is defined by legal thresholds, reporting requirements, and the information available at the time decisions are made. Their involvement reflects process rather than outcome.
Public court records also documented that Julia Tomlin had a prior child neglect conviction from 2010 involving severe injury to a child. That conviction existed independently of this case and was part of the historical record reviewed by investigators. No assumptions were drawn from that history alone. Investigators treated it as contextual information, one data point among many, while continuing to focus on present-day evidence. At this stage, the investigation remained broad. Search efforts were ongoing. Interviews continued. Background information was reviewed carefully, without public interpretation or commentary. As days passed, investigators began noting changes, not conclusions, but shifts. These changes appeared in communication patterns, timelines, and narrative structure. Investigators compared early statements with later ones, checking for consistency and verification. This is routine in prolonged investigations and does not on its own imply intent or motive. With assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, including analytical support, reported timelines were reviewed in detail. Investigators examined whether statements aligned with confirmed evidence, known movements, and physical findings. During this review, inconsistencies were identified in the reported timeline of events. These discrepancies did not immediately redefine the case, but they prompted closer scrutiny. Investigators also assessed the physical environment inside the home. Evidence recovered during processing included clean bloodstains. The presence of cleaning activity became a documented observation, evaluated alongside other findings. At the same time, public communication became more limited. This shift reflected the investigation's progression rather than secrecy. As cases move from search-focused efforts to evidentiary review, information is often held to preserve integrity and accuracy. Community interaction also changed. Public searches decreased. Organized efforts gave way to quieter observation, as law enforcement activity became less visible but more concentrated. Throughout this period, official language remained controlled and factual. Authorities avoided public characterization of events beyond what could be verified. The case was no longer defined only by absence. It was being shaped by evidence. The investigation reached a turning point when new information was formally acknowledged by law enforcement. During interviews, Julia Tomlin provided a confession to investigators. According to official records, she stated that Noah died during an unattended bath. She further stated that his body was concealed in a diaper box and later disposed of in the trash. This information redirected the focus of the case decisively. Search efforts were refined. Investigators traced trash collection routes and focused attention on waste processing locations. This process ultimately led to the recovery of Noah's remains at the Hampton steam plant, a trash diversion facility. An autopsy was conducted as part of standard procedure. Medical examiners documented skull, jaw, and rib fractures, as well as a pattern of repeated abuse. Based on these findings, Noah's death was classified as violent and unnatural, and the cause of death was ruled homicide. These determinations were made through forensic examination and official review. They were presented as factual conclusions, without commentary or interpretation beyond their technical meaning. With these findings, the investigation transitioned fully from a missing child case to a criminal inquiry centered on evidence and documented statements. The nature of the case had changed, not through a speculation, not through assumption, but through confirmed information, collected step by step. The case is now resolved. Following the recovery of Noah Tomlin's remains and the conclusion of the investigation, formal charges were filed. The legal process moved forward through the court system, relying on documented evidence, forensic findings, and recorded statements. Julia Tomlin later entered a guilty plea to multiple charges, including second-degree murder, child abuse and neglect, and concealment of a body. These charges reflected the findings established during the investigation and medical examination. The court imposed a total sentence of 55 years in prison. That sentence was structured as follows: 40 years for second-degree murder, 10 years for felony child abuse and neglect, 5 years for concealment of a body. With the sentencing complete, the criminal case reached its legal conclusion. There are no pending charges related to Noah's death, and no unresolved proceedings connected to this case. From an investigative standpoint, the questions surrounding Noah's disappearance, death, and location were answered through official findings and court outcomes. The case moved from uncertainty to documentation, and from investigation to record. This resolution, however, does not signal closure in a broader sense. Legal outcomes conclude cases within the justice system, but they do not erase the circumstances that made the case possible. That distinction matters. Cases like this inevitably raise difficult questions about systems designed to protect children. Public records show that Noah had prior contact with child welfare structures, including foster and respite care. Those systems exist to provide oversight, support, and intervention when concerns are identified. Their involvement reflects processes built around reporting thresholds, available information, and legal authority. This documentary does not assign blame to institutions or individuals beyond what has been legally established. Instead, it acknowledges a reality that professionals across child welfare, law enforcement, and healthcare openly recognize. Systems are reactive by design. They respond to information as it becomes available, and their effectiveness depends on what is reported, observed, and documented. In this case, involvement occurred at different points in time, under different circumstances, and with different levels of visibility. Decisions were made within the limits of policy, law, and the facts known at those moments. What the case reveals is not a single failure, but a layered environment where risk, responsibility, and oversight intersect. It highlights how vulnerable children often exist within complex networks of care, networks that rely on communication, follow-up, and continuity. For professionals who work in these fields, cases like this reinforce the importance of vigilance and coordination. For the public, they offer a clearer view of how protective systems operate and where their limitations lie. Reflection does not require outrage. It requires understanding. Beyond timelines, charges, and court records, there was a child at the center of this case. Noah Tomlin was 2 years old. At that age, a child's life is measured in small moments, learning words, being carried from place to place, reacting to familiar voices, existing almost entirely within the care of others. There are no long personal histories at that stage of life, no written memories, no recorded explanations. What remains are fragments, a name, an age, a place. Remembering Noah does not require revisiting the details of what happened to him. It requires acknowledging that his life mattered, regardless of how brief it was, that he existed as more than a case file or headline. In the end, the most accurate way to honor a child is with restraint, by refusing to turn their story into spectacle, and by keeping the focus on truth rather than drama. Noah's story is now part of the public record, but his identity is not defined by how it ended. This case reached a legal conclusion, but the questions it raises extend beyond one investigation, one courtroom, or one sentence. How many warning signs go unnoticed because they appear ordinary at the time? How often do systems intervene only after harm becomes visible? And how many cases remain unresolved, unseen, or undocumented? Some answers are written into policy, others remain uncertain. And until those questions are fully understood, stories like this will continue to matter, not as entertainment, but as reminders of the quiet spaces where responsibility, care, and oversight intersect. Some questions remain, and they deserve to be asked carefully.